Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra and Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports, joined today as always by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, NWSL broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's episode, we have a SheBelieves Cup 2022 preview taking place adjacent to the Arnold Cluck tournament, which we will have more on for you. But before we get into everything, a quick reminder on Twitter for all breaking news at Attacking Third. You're listening to this as a podcast. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps us out so much. But today, talking about SheBelieves Cup, we are going to let you know now at this point in the episode that we have an interview coming up with Lynn Williams of the United States Women's National Team. So stay tuned for that at the second half of this preview. Lots here for us to dive into. Lisa, how are you today?
A lot is here for us to dive into. I'm good, Sandra. It's been a hectic Monday for us, right? Like it
It's
has.
yeah.
But
Happy
I'm
Valentine's
pumped.
Day, buddy.
Happy Valentine's Day, Sandra. I love working with you. This is just so lovely. But yeah, I mean, we got soccer games coming up, right? Like
Yeah.
NWSL. Oh, I'm sorry, not NWSL, but like US Women's National Team. We got
Yeah.
the SheBelieves Cup coming up, and NWSL players competing in them this week. Like it is here this week, and we did get to chat with Lynn Williams. It was a great little convo, and she's pumped for it, and it kind of gave me like good vibes and good
Yeah.
energy for it. Not that I didn't before, but I'm good on this Monday. How are you?
Yeah, same. I mean, we're chatting like definitely off mic about how like there's a maybe a certain level. It's a beautiful day. It's a day for love and friendship, right? All that good stuff. But it's also like with it comes like a certain chaotic energy that comes into that, and we're just like leaning into it on Attacking Third. And we were like, today would be a great day to get into all things SheBelieves
Heck
Cup.
yeah.
But
Tell
let's.
people in your lives that you love them, right? And give your
Oh
favorite
yeah,
podcast some love, like Attacking Third. Drop
yeah.
us a note.
Like a direct Valentine's Day action would
Mhm.
100% be like what we ask folks
Yeah.
every beginning of the episode, like hit us with that 5-star rating. It's like you're sending us a little Valentine, it's like we love it. And you know what else we love the SheBelieves Cup. So let's do it. Let's rattle off about the 2022 SheBelieves Cup. It is going to be the 7th annual year that this tournament is taking place. It's going to be kicking off on February 17th, another match on the 20th, and then concluding on the 23rd. Czech Republic, New Zealand, and Iceland are joining the United States Women's National Team in the 4-team round robin style tournament. Going to be played as a series of double headers over the span of a week. The first 2 days and 4 matches are going to be in Carson, California at Dignity Health Sports Park. And then the third and final 2 matches will be at Toyota Stadium in Frisco, Texas. And all of the matches can be viewed through ESPN. We did do a roster drop episode
Mhm.
for this particular roster ahead of the SheBelieves Cup tournament, Lisa.
We did. That was early in February. There have been changes
Yep.
already from that roster drop, but we gave the overview of it at that point. So go check it out, listen to it as a podcast. It's also all over our YouTube page if you want to hear our initial reactions to the roster drop. But there have been some changes since then. Defender Abby Dahlkemper, she was ruled out about a week before the first match in the SheBelieves Cup with a back injury. So because of that, forward for Washington Spirit, Trinity Rodman, she got the call up. She was already going to be called into camp for the national team leading up to the SheBelieves Cup the week before when they get into training. But now she has made the full roster, so she'll be on the game day roster. And also midfielder Lindsey Herrera, she was ruled out due to some knee irritation. So because of that, racing Louisville midfielder Jealin Howell will step in and replace Herrera. So two big veterans in Dahlkemper and Lindsey Herrera are no longer involved in the SheBelieves Cup, and two young players, rookie of the year in Trinity Rodman and Jealin Howell, number 2 overall draft pick in the NWSL draft, are now joining Vlatko Andinovski and his crew. So that did change things up a little bit. I'm going to run through the roster for everyone quickly just to refresh your memories. Goalkeepers, 3 of them, Audrey Kingsbury, Casey Murphy, and Alyssa Nair. Defenders, Alana Cook, Tierna Davidson, Emily Fox, Sophia Huerta, Kelly O'Hara, Emily Sonnet, and Becky Sauerbraun. Midfielders, Morgan Gautral, Jealin Howell, Rose Lavelle, Katerina Macario, Christy Mewis, Ashley Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan. And then forwards, 6 of them: Ashley Hatch, Mallory Pugh, Margaret Purse, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, and Lynn Williams. So a nice hefty roster for Vlatko Andinovski, even though some changes last minute for him. I know that players like Trinity Rodman and Jealin Howell were ready for this call up. I mean, that's what you're hoping and expecting for when you don't make that initial roster, that somehow you can weasel your way into this roster and get a cap with this team.
Yeah, you never know, right? You got to stay ready for the opportunity whenever it comes and however it arrives, right? And I think in the case of Trinity Rodman, this is somebody who has been involved with the team in a national team camp level, the senior level, at least since the beginning of this year. There's enough there, in the eyes of Vlatko Andinovski and the remainder of the coaching staff to sort of keep this player in the mix, to sort of bump her up, right, from what was going to be a training camp player throughout the duration of this tournament to, a fully rostered player. I guess that remains to be seen whether or not a player like Robin is going to get time right on the pitch. And I think I would maybe even include Howell in that similar category as well. A lot of what we heard from, Vlatko Andinovski coming out of his media availability was the fact that, yes, this is a little bit of a next gen roster that everyone is looking at, but there's still players on it that are within a certain caliber who are young enough that they don't really want to throw a ton at them right away, but they definitely want to keep them involved in camps to ensure that they're progressing and developing at a little bit of a more leveled rate versus a chaotic rate, right? We were going to be using that word a lot today on this episode. So I you never want to see anyone have to pull out due to injury, whether it was somebody like a Dahlkemper or like a Herrera, citing the knee irritation for Herrera or the the back injuries for Dahlkemper. But that opens up spots, right? So that doesn't, and it's good to sort of see that, listen, there's 2 players who aren't going to be a part of it. And the coaching staff says, well, listen, we're going to have players slot in. We're not going to leave those empty.
And I think it's also almost preventative to not let these injuries get so much worse. I mean, the SheBelieves Cup is a very important tournament because it is the first matches that the United States will play in this year ahead of World Cup qualifying year. However, it's not a make or break tournament, and these players are in, for Lindsey Horan, in the middle of her Lyon season, and for the NWSL players, they're in the start of their preseason, and if Vlatko Andinovski is passionate about anything, it's club play for his national team players and making sure that they can get good competition and good training with their respective club teams. And when you look at a player like Abby Dahlkemper, she has an entire season ahead of her with San Diego Wave. And if she plays in the SheBelieves Cup and it puts her out for months for her club team, it's not worth it on that sense. So I think it's a lot of big picture overview for Vlatko Andinovski and not looking immediately at what he needs today from these players, but long term. He wants them for the World Cup. He needs them to get better now, which is something to keep in perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to put that in there. I'm sure they're looking at this tournament in all of those different angles, primarily when we're looking at the window of time, right, that's taking place between games. This team closed out their 2021 calendar year in Australia in 2021, and then went right into 2022 into a camp that didn't have any games lined up in terms of other international teams. There were some scrimmages, I guess, that took place with the U23 side, but now it's here. Like now, this is going to be the first crack at actual international level play. For these teams. And maybe we should talk about that, a little bit in terms of the competition that they're going to be facing here, because this particular window of time, this FIFA window has sort of spawned off some other kind of tournaments, right? It's not just, everybody took a look at kind of what the United States women's national team was doing in U.S. soccer and said, hey, like a tournament where you make a bunch of other people come to you, that sounds delightful. So there's been some other competitions that have spawned off, right? We already mentioned one at the top of the hour that we'll get into some more in the future. But for this SheBelieves Cup, the opposition looks a little different than maybe it has in the past, right? We're talking the 7th annual year that this is kicked off. It had the beginnings with United States, with England, with Germany, with France, right? These was the United States versus these very top elite European sides. And over the time, it sort of evolved a little bit to include some other sides, whether it was Latin American sides, someone like Brazil, or
Mhm.
Asian sides in terms of Japan, and then even more recently seeing a team like Spain in the mix in the past. So for this one, it's going to be Czech Republic, Iceland, and New Zealand for SheBelieves Cup. And there's always a certain level of narrative around the United States and their opponents, who they're going to be going up again as they're preparing, right, for the preparations and ahead of the 2023 World Cup. But when it comes to like these three opponents, Czech Republic, New Zealand, Iceland, who is there a game here in particular that you're like looking at? Is there a team that you're looking at that you think you have circled for yourself, Lisa, that you're like, I really want to see what the United States is going to be doing against this particular team?
I'm excited for all three of these matches for the United States against Czech Republic, New Zealand, and Iceland. But the one that I'm most excited for, and it's not just because of the timing of this game, Sunday in the afternoon for me, but the United States versus New Zealand, because New Zealand is a nation that the United States has played a number of times. I think 19 overall meetings, or this will be the 19th all-time meeting between these two sides. But most recently, they played them in Tokyo in the 2020 Olympics. And New Zealand is also a nation that is co-hosting the World Cup in 2023. So New Zealand has a lot going for them because they've already qualified for the World Cup. So they're looking to get the most out of these matches in preparation for what is to come in 2023. But it's the most familiar opponent that the United States has, and vice versa. New Zealand knows the United States really, really well. Now, we did touch on that it's a roster for the United States that is skewed so much younger and newer, with a lot of players that don't have a lot of caps underneath their belts. So it's different for the United States and for New Zealand, but I'm pumped for this game because it's almost like a rematch of that group stage game in Tokyo that happened. The United States ultimately winning 6-1 in that one. New Zealand coming up with 2 own goals in that one. It was a rough go for New Zealand, but that was at a time when the United States wasn't playing their best soccer, right? They were facing a lot of different factors, and the heat in Tokyo and the pressure that they faced, and not having a lot of preparation leading up to the Tokyo Olympics, and injuries that they were faced with. So it was just a number of different factors coming into that match. And I'm hoping that on this February 20th game against New Zealand for the United States, that it can almost be like a clean slate for both of these sides, and they can use what they learned in Tokyo last summer to prepare and progress forward. But that's the game I'm really excited for, especially because it's right in the afternoon on Sunday, so I can watch it and not have to stay up too late. But for you, Sandra, what about you? Between Czech Republic, New Zealand, and Iceland, is there a certain competition or a certain way you're looking to watch how the United States plays against one of these nations?
Listen, I'm sure people are going to be taking a look at, the timeline between the other two remaining sides as well. I think the most recent, match that you're discussing with the Olympics, New Zealand is going to be sticking out, I think, for a lot of people, right?
Mhm.
Including the convenient time on Sunday. I'm very excited for that myself as well. There's some late kickoff times, right, for this one if you're on the eastern side of the country here, but they're going to be looking at the timeline and the history between these other matches, right? When we're looking at the Czech Republic, it's only going to be the second meeting ever between those two sides, right?
Mhm.
Going back to all the way to the year 2000, where the United States defeated them 8-1. So there's going to be many new things, right? That the team is going to get a look at, and audiences are going to get a look at, quite frankly. But if I had to circle one for myself, I am going to be looking out of all three of these matches for that sort of final, that last third and final match when they go up against Iceland. And even though it is the 15th meeting all time between the two sides, it's the first time between these two sides since 2015.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of there. That's not enough there. There's not gonna be the angle of familiarity, right? In terms of like, oh, these are two sides that are familiar with each other. I think you can even, echo that's maybe a similar storyline that you can echo for New Zealand and United States, but maybe not these other two sides. And so for Iceland, I've got that one circled because it's the third and final match. Who knows how the table is going to shake out in terms of who's going to be chasing this 7th annual SheBelieves Cup title. So there's that excitement around it as well. But Iceland is a team, out of the remainder of these sides, they're not like New Zealand in that they've already, got themselves a World Cup berth. They're not like Czech Republic in terms of, sort making sure that they're going up against other top competition. They're a side that has been in the mix of UEFA qualifiers before in the past, in Euros in the past, and really sort of made a name for themselves in the program probably over the last cycle or so. So I'm going to be looking at USA versus Iceland because I think there's going to be, if there's a game to maybe learn something out of,
Yeah.
whether you're looking at individual performances and stuff like that, I think it's going to be this game to pay attention to.
And also, I mean, right, it's a good start time for you. So we're talking about these start times. I'm going to lay out the schedule for everyone. The tournament starts on February 17th, which is Thursday of this week. The United States plays at 11 o'clock Eastern against Czech Republic. The first of the doubleheader is Iceland versus New Zealand at 8 o'clock Eastern. Then February 20th on Sunday is the second match day. United States against New Zealand at 3 o'clock Eastern. Czech Republic versus Iceland at 6 o'clock Eastern. And then the last match day in Texas, this one is moved from California to Texas on February 23rd. Wednesday is the final day of the tournament. New Zealand versus Czech Republic kicks off the doubleheader at 6 o'clock Eastern, and then the United States versus Iceland at 9 o'clock Eastern. So you can watch all of these games also on ESPN. I think one or two of them are on ABC. Double check your local listings on those. But yeah, interesting time zones for them. And it is the team with the most points at the end of it comes out the winner of the SheBelieves Cup. And the United States have won the last 4 consecutive years. So they're looking to continue that streak and keep going throughout this one. So you're keeping an eye on USA versus Iceland, the last match day on February 23rd. I'm really interested in USA versus New Zealand on February 20th. And we got to see how they start things, right? And that's really what I'm pumped about for the first match against Czech Republic, is to see who Vlatko Andinovski starts with, what formation he puts out there, what personnel he puts on the pitch in this very first match of 2022 for the United States.
I'm right there with you. We did the roster drop episode. We rattled off the names once more for everybody tuning into the preview. That is the storyline I think that a lot of folks are going to be leaning into on this one. When people are looking at the version of SheBelieves Cup 7.0, right? For the United States women's national team, they're going to be the storylines are going to be looking at this next gen roster. Who's going to be getting starts, right? Who's going to be getting their number called throughout any 3 of these matches? And they're going to be looking at the opposition that this team is going up against, right? Because even though there's been a lot of conversation about who's in, right, and who's not in camp right now for this roster going into this tournament, the other side of that is they're going up against some teams that have not participated in a SheBelieves Cup tournament before. So there's these 2 different angles that we're taking. So in terms of this roster in front of us and the 3 matches that will take place, are there some absolutes for you, Lisa? Like, who do you think you absolutely want to see time from in a kind of a rapid fire, quick round robin style kind of tournament like this?
Okay, so it's who I want to see or who
Who
I
do you want to
expect
see?
to see.
You're the coach.
I
Who do you
love when I
want
get
to
to be
put
the
in there?
coach. I love when I get the whiteboard and the marker and I get to be the coach. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. I've been dreaming of this moment. I want to see Morgan Gautrat. I want to see her get time because she's a player, a midfielder for Chicago Red Stars that has spent a lot of time with the national team camp. And over the last few years, she really hasn't been called in. And this is the second time she's being called in by Vlatko Andinovski. So I want her to be rewarded for her really good midfield play with Chicago Red Stars at the club level in the NWSL. And I want to see how that translates, especially because when you look at the midfield crew that he has called in, of the 7 players, a lot of them are not as experienced. I mean, they have the experience and they have the caps, but there's no Sam Lewis. There is no Lindsay Horan in this mix. So there are not the typical starter that Vlatko Andinovski usually goes for. So I want to see Morgan Gautrat get some minutes in the midfield, even a Christy Mewis, because she's someone that's kind of come in and out of Vlatko's camps and starting lineups and getting consistent playing time. So I want to see why he continues to keep her into camp and see if she can get minutes. And then up top, I love this forward group that he brought in. I love it so much. I know we always talk about defenders, but this forward crew, I am just so hype about. Ashley Hatch, Mallory Pugh, Margaret Purse, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, Lynn Williams. This is a attacking six group that any combination I think could be very, very lethal against opponents. They're all incredibly fast. They can all score goals in a variety of ways, shooting from outside the box, header goals, getting in behind back lines on quick transition. There's just so many possibilities. But because Trinity Rodman was named in the training camp leading up to SheBelieves camp, and then called in, the first one called in after Abby Dahlkemper when decided she was not going to come to the SheBelieves Cup tournament, Trinity Rodman was the first one called up and called back in. So I want her to get time, and I want her to get minutes to kind of show that she can compete and she can hang with the big kids at the national team level. So those are particularly who I'm looking at. Sandra, for you, I mean, from goalkeeper all the way up to the forward line, I'll hand over my whiteboard and my marker for just a minute before I'm going to steal it back from you. But who do you want?
Look, I love being first assistant. It's a role I find I thrive in. You know, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think when I'm looking at each of these games, right? We're particularly this first game against Czech Republic. Why not put Trinity Rodman out there? Why not? Just why not? Like, let's just see. Like, you're talking about, you know, a gradual development for a very young player introduced to the senior level national team. Why not give her, you know, 30 minutes against in the second ever meeting against Czech Republic for the first time since 2000? You know, it's like, why not? Like, what would be the reason not to, other than, you know, an unfortunate, you know, late game scratch or something due to, you know, an injury. But I would love to see all of these forwards in some capacity get time collectively over the course of these 3 games. I want to see the continued development of Margaret Purse across that forward line in some capacity. I believe that towards the end of 2021, we saw a shift in getting her pushed higher, and she's been doing enough to not relinquish that position. That while she was kind of in the mix and sort of maybe being in one of those high attacking outside back roles, she has now, I think, shown enough to sort of snatch, you know, a role in that mix, in that conversation among the forward core. So I want to see the continued development of Margaret Purse over the course of these 3 games within the attacking line. I'm with you. I want to see Morgan Gautrat try to, you know, be the captain of a midfield that's full of players who are going to be getting, you know, maybe first time experiences in the midfield. Maybe not so much, you know, alongside a Rose Lavelle or Christy Mewis, but any mix of these players that are a Howell, a Macario, a Sanchez, a Sullivan, how are they going to look, you know, with somebody like Gautrat, who has been there, you know, with this team at this level before? And in terms of the, you know, defensive back line, I don't know. Are we going to see Emily Sana actually play in the center back position again? They had to, you know, go through some rotation here to sort of see how things look. But I do know I want to also see the continued development of Tierna Davidson at that as part of that center back duo, however it looks throughout the duration of this SheBelieves Cup. And I think we got to see how Alyssa Nair is still doing in that based off of that injury, right?
Yes. I mean, yeah, I think that having Alyssa Nair in camp after she suffered an injury early in Tokyo and didn't play at all the rest of the NWSL season, wasn't called into camps anymore for the United States, just really rehabbing that knee injury she suffered. She's back on this roster. So I don't know if she'll get a full game or full anything like that. That's my only hesitation, because as we talked about, these games are not super crucial in the international FIFA rankings of the game. They're crucial for player experience, to get caps for different players, for those types of things, for Vlatko Andinovski to see different player personnel. I want to see Aubrey Kingsbury, formerly Bledsoe, Washington Spirit goalkeeper. I want to see
Yeah.
her get minutes.
I was going to say there's 3 games. You think we might see 3 different keepers?
That's a good question. I'm going to go with my gut and say no.
Yeah.
As
I
much
think you're
as I
smart.
would
I think
like
you're smart and
to,
wise to say that.
as much as I would like to say yes, that we are gonna see 3 different keepers for 3 different games,
Yeah.
I don't see that happening,
Re
especially just the history of Vlatko Andinovski and how he rotates his goalkeepers.
Yes.
No.
If I rephrase the question to say, would you like to see each
Yes,
keeper?
of course. I think it would behoove Vlatko Andinovski to play all 3 of them and gave minutes, but he's very much a player, and if they do very well, reward that and keep them in, because goalkeeper is not a position that you can really rotate around that much throughout the match. I have another question for you, Sandra, before we kind of wrap this one up. We talked about getting players minutes. Now, do you think it's more or less beneficial for these players that you want to see, Mallory Pugh, Trinity Rodman, Gautral, even Emily Sonnet in the center back, to get a start at these positions, or just to be rotated in throughout the match, even at like the
Yeah.
60-minute mark, 50-minute mark, even
No, I
at
think
halftime?
that's a great question. I think there's a number of players on this roster, right, that have been attached or tied to those Australia friendlies, right? The ones that they close out their calendar year with. And I would say any of the players that have sort of been in the mix of these camps from that November 21 camp in Australia. So I want to see full games from particular players. I wouldn't mind like split minutes for someone like a Trinity Rodman again, or a Howell, who are still getting into the mix of
Mhm.
things, but actual starts and developing 90 game minutes beginning to end. I want to see that from a Margaret Purse. I want to see that from a Tierna Davidson. I want to see that from a Sofia Huerta, because she's
Yeah.
someone who's getting back in the mix as well, but was coming off of the bench. How is she looking with this team from minute 1 to minute 90?
Yeah, and
I would love to see that.
it's a different vibe as a player if you get the start, right? If you're in the locker room or at training the day before and coach comes up to you and says, listen, you're going to get the start, it's a different mindset. It's a different confidence level for these players. And you do get more time on the pitch to kind of fall into the game. When there are certain players that are very good off the bench, they are, and that's their role to play. But if you want these players to become a starting role per position, you have to give them starts, and the SheBelieves Cup is the perfect place to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. I know we're going to be doing a recap of She Believes Cup as well. So we'll see who's going to, lift the cup, retain the title, or, if it's the United States, or if it's going to be someone new. Maybe there'll be a shocker in this one. Who knows? We'll see. Anything can happen.